So, good morning, everyone. We'll begin with the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings release from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. Continue to follow Reverend Heng Chau and Marty on their pilgrimage. Today's entry is by Dharma Master Heng Chau, or Marty. April 22nd, 1978. Titled, Like the Master Painter. Last week, on a hot day, outside and inside, I lost patience and climbed back to bathe in some deep, cool crystal pools at the front of a small waterfall. It was delightful, too delightful. That night in a dream, I encountered a demonic obstacle in the form of a beautiful, spellbinding woman. I woke up drained of energy and scattered. Today, when I should have been bowing, I stopped to write a verse of praise for the Master's birthday. It was false thinking. Why? My motive was to flatter my teacher in hope of receiving praise and recognition, to win his approval. Thoughts like these are off the mark and drift wide and far from proper mindfulness. As I sat absorbed in verse writing, a car pulled over. "Howdy, brother. What's happening?" "This is Patty, and my name's Lou," said a tall, wild-eyed looking man. He reached out his hand and said, "Do I shake, or what's appropriate with a monk?" "It's not fixed. Whatever feels right to you," I answered, somewhat uncertain. "Well then, shake," he said, thrusting out his hand after wiping over and back a couple of times on his pants. "I'm Christian, so I guess I'll say God bless." There was a woman with him, but I didn't look at her as she was silent and stood to the side. Lud said he wanted to make an offering and went back to the car. The woman then moved closer and stood in front of me. I looked at her face and immediately felt my belly jump. She was the same beautiful demon woman that ensnared me in my dream the night of the waterfall bath last week. A mischievous smile came to her face when she knew I had made the connection and recognized her. I think I broke out in a sweat and turned white on the spot. Fortunately, Lou came striding back with a large rock in his hand. "It's jade. Best piece I got. It's the biggest I found. Sorry ain't much. You can rub it up and polish it. Maybe carve it," he said as he rubbed it on his nose and then his jeans to make it shine. Patty kept trying to catch my eyes, but I refused to look at her again. "It's worth maybe $10 if you polish it up good," declared Lou, holding the jade up to the sunlight and then handing it to me. Well, good luck, brother. Take care, said Lu, shaking his hands goodbye. How could a demonic temptress experienced in a dream suddenly manifest in front of me a week later as we bowed on the highway? In the Avatamsaka it says, just as the master painter cannot know his own mind, still his paintings come from the mind. The nature of all dharmas is like this. This encounter with Patti was a dharma, a painting produced from my own mind. And yet, just as the painter does not know how his paintings come from his mind, in the same way, I don't know how my mind painted Patti. And yet karma is not off by a hair. The fruits of retribution come from the karma one creates. The 3 karmas of body, mouth, and thoughts conjure up some incredible things. And what began only as a thought in one's mind can suddenly materialize before one's eyes as if pulled out of thin air. Again, it's like a crafty wizard who stands there at the crossroads, conjuring up a bunch of forms and shapes. The nature of karma is the same. Avatamsaka Sutra, chapter 10. Later, we asked the master about demons and how to deal with them. The master said, demonic states come from a particle of a desire or attachment in your mind, which unites with the external conditions and manifests as a demon. The poison within unites with the poison without. How should we respond when we meet up with demonic obstacles? We asked. Don't move. Don't move your mind. Overcome all demons with the gong fu of patience. When karmic obstacles or demons arise, if you recognize them for what they really are, then you can ignore them. Act as if they don't exist, responded the master. Is there a special method to subdue them? We asked. The only defense against the demons is kindness and compassion. Don't fight with them. Save them and take them across, replied the master. Some demonic obstacles are really fierce, I said. Selfishness brings demons. If you have no desire and don't seek, then you won't be afflicted. You'll be able to turn all demons, answered the master. A particle of a desire or attachment is like a seed in the mind. Sooner or later it sprouts trouble. Whether in a dream or for real, the mind itself doesn't distinguish. The mind is neither inside nor outside. It is measureless and constantly non-dwelling, without boundaries, without time, without a place. Avatamsaka Sutra, chapter 20. The mind is constantly not dwelling. Measureless it is and hard to think of. It reveals and manifests all forms, each of which does not know the other. So quite an experience by Marty, starting with thought of maybe indulging himself in a nice cool pool next to a waterfall, to then having a dream about kind of a beautiful woman that then a week later shows up. It's interesting, as we start to cultivate, we begin to start connecting dots that are usually overlooked when we're just going through our lives in the world, rushing from this to that. We don't see how the thought of greed or craving or indulgence leads to a kind of clinging, a kind of grasping at images or thoughts or stories or fantasies, which actually creates them. We actually create the realities that we live in. And then that creates birth, old age, sickness, and death, this whole cycle that we get entangled with. But because Marty is on the road bowing and watching his mind and has precepts to restrain his senses, he can catch himself. And although there's these mistakes, you could say, these small holes or leaks, he doesn't follow them and then get caught by them. And I think this is something that's a lesson for all of us in our spiritual journeys, especially for those of us here at the monastery cultivating. It's not easy. We can see these deeper inner workings of the mind. And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's impatient. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's hungry. All the various states start to pop up one by one. And what tool do we have? I think Master Hua gave the master tool, the tool of all tools, which is patience. That works every time. Is the ability just to say, this is arising. I don't have to react. I don't have to get afraid. I don't have to believe the state. I can just stay grounded in the present here and now. Maybe I'll say this is something that I found really valuable about practice, is that why we want to have a mindfulness practice 24/7. Perhaps it's reciting the Buddha's name, or Guanyin Bodhisattva's name, the Great Compassion Mantra, or simply learning to watch the breath and relax the body all the time. Because that becomes the place I found that when something arises in our lives, let's say it's sexual desire, or anger and irritation, or fear, or loneliness, that we can just kind of anchor ourselves in. Go, okay, I know I have these deep habitual patterns for this emotion. But rather than following it, I'm going to anchor myself in my Dharma practice. And it's almost like we do it like our very lives depended on it. To me, that's, you could say, maybe a starting place for patience. It's maybe not ultimate patience because we're still trying to maintain the mind in a certain way. But what I found is when we can do that, just stay with our Dharma method throughout the day, just apply it without any expectations for some special rewards, the good news comes. And the good news comes as no news. We're just patient. Okay, so maybe that much for this morning. We do 3 steps, 1 bow, and hope everyone can have a day where you can maybe practice patience. If you have a Dharma method, encourage you just to keep it going the whole day. And the amount of time we can just stay with it is the amount of patience that we're developing. And also, because we're going on a trip to Snow Mountain Monastery tomorrow morning, we're not going to have Dharma reflections and 3 steps, 1 bow tomorrow, as well as probably Wednesday. But we might start up on Thursday from Snow Mountain, depending on the internet connection. Okay, so I wish everyone well, and maybe you can do 3 days of patience. Okay, Amitofo.